Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello, welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. Tonight you're joined by me, Kirk Henderson. I'm editor-in-chief over at MavsMoneyball.com, and one of our other editors, Ben Zadell. How you doing, Ben?
Doing good, Kirk. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm delighted you could join. Josh is he just wasn't feeling the best, and there's nothing we have to talk about, but I like sticking to a regular posting schedule. So we're recording. I really appreciate you pinch hitting. And Ben has been kind of keeping our site afloat with player reviews and such, as all of us at Mavs Moneyball are still brain dead. Let me see here. So, we're recording here. It's Tuesday night, just a shade after 8:00 on May the 2nd. There's about 13 days until the NBA draft lottery. We're sort of slogging through, figuring out things to talk about, figuring out things to argue about. And lucky for us, Tim Cato, who one of our former editor-in-chief of Mavs Moneyball way back in the day, I egged him on over the weekend, basically asking a bunch of questions because he's like an honest-to-God reporter, and I am not. Though we can talk about that a little bit too. And he wrote kind of a, just a season in review and like the off season and like kind of what's at stake for the Mavericks. And, he did a little bit of unloading of the notebook in terms of just little tidbits of things that I thought were like laugh out loud funny. The one that I really enjoyed the most was just kind of the communicate, like what happened with Christian Wood as far as he could tell. That was pretty entertaining, and which led to Christian Wood briefly tweeting out that stop putting out articles with lies in it. And basically the only thing we could figure out that Tim was that Christian Wood was talking about was that his agent was contacting people, basically trying to kickstart an all-star campaign for Christian Wood, which was true because at least half of our staff have messages. Mike Bibbins has messages. Dalton Trigg has messages. Like Tim McMahon, Tim Cato. We could write a 400-page book on the messages he sent to us. That's not a criticism. I thought it was a bit odd, but it was just one of those things out there,
Yeah, I just feel kind of left out that I didn't get any DMs from his agent. I guess I didn't write enough about Christian Wood, even though I was the one article I put out in October, November, something like that, was about how Christian Wood needed to play more. I felt, at the time that made sense. As the season progressed, not so much. But yeah, it was really funny to see Christian Wood tweet that when honestly he was kind of an afterthought in that article.
It was just this was a thing. Yeah, this was a thing that happened, and it was not his fault. His agent was doing his job, I guess. I mean, I'm a little unorthodox in my opinion, but you could always tell. We'll just put it to you like this, guys. If you go review after a good Christian Wood game the dates on Twitter, you'll see various media members and sometimes non-media members, which was my favorite part, share eerily similar tweets. And you could tell when people were copying and pasting these things from their Twitter DMs to their tweets. Like Brad Townsend did it once. Josh Eberly did it once. My man Mavs Draft did it once. We all got. It was hilarious. And then when we all started talking to each other during the year, as the year went on, I was like, oh, he's messaging you too? Like, it was great. It was great. It's just funny, weird stuff. Because I mean, like, we're fans. We're not like we're media in the sense that we put out media, but I'm not like a beat reporter. I'm not going to go out there.
Right. I'm not sure what he's trying to accomplish there by just spamming everyone, because it makes sense if he's hitting up like the national reporters, some of the, local beat guys like Tim or McMahon or Townsend or Callie. It makes sense to do that, but just spamming every single person is just kind of weird. But hey, he's got his methods. That's fine, I guess.
Cato did confirm that when Kyrie Irving was suspended for, a tweet is an endorsement, whether you will like it or not, about the video, the video that had all the weird anti-Semitic stuff in it, and then didn't apologize. He said that, quote, some within the Mavericks organization immediately saw it as an opportunity, according to team sources, to acquire him for cheaper asking price than might be expected of a player of his talent, which, as we know, he became a Maverick a couple of months later. It was a good article in that it wasn't particularly, I thought it was very balanced, because once you get past sort of the original sin of not re-signing Jalen Brunson, in hindsight, everything sort of cracked from there. And, we got to where we were. It was simply not a very fun season. And
it was a really interesting article. Sorry to cut you off.
No, please.
But he got some really good quotes. None of them were on record, I guess. But they were mostly background. Yep. But you just some of the stuff, like you're bringing up with the Kyrie Irving thing, that they were just kind of ready to pounce on that. For me, it really kind of helped me understand the thinking and some of the decision making that they had going on behind the scenes this last year. You can kind of see where their minds were, and honestly, it's kind of the usual Maverick place of just superstar hunting, just in a different way. Rather, instead of through cap space, it was kind of damage assets on the market, which makes sense because they don't have they are discount shopping. Honestly, they don't have a ton of assets. They're not sitting on a pile of picks and young players that they could make a big trade for. So that all makes sense. It's actually kind of interesting that they targeted Irving that early. So
which in one respect, it makes me feel a little better about the fact that they clearly knew by probably early December that they had a ball handler problem. And we know that because obviously, remember, Kemba Walker was on the team at one point.
I would say it was a training camp, because didn't they pretty much immediately sign? His name is escaping me now. The guy that they had to cut to sign Kemba Walker. Campazzo.
Yeah. Oh
Campazzo.
Yeah. Campazzo.
They had to bring in Campazzo before training camp was even done. What, a month and a half out of Cuban saying, "Hey, don't worry, we've got Frank Ntilikina on the team. It's all good."
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and now we're kind of here. There's not been really any other news of the day. Oh no, there was two parts of this which I found particularly interesting. One, that the Mavericks would be interested in pursuing Chris Middleton and DeAndre Ayton were the opportunity to arise, more or less, which I sort of stepped into hot water yesterday by declaring, and I said this definitively because I trust the person who told me this, okay? And that Middleton was the reason, was the final straw in pushing Kidd out the door. There were a lot of reasons why Kidd got fired. One of which is that the team wasn't very good and was underperforming for a long time. But there was a lot of Kidd back in, is this 5-6 years ago now? Kidd was a different player or a different coach by all accounts, and was really kind of manipulative. You read, this is in the Honest book. He was not, he doesn't come off well during his Bucks tenure, kind of psychotic, to be quite honest with you. And from what I was told by someone I trust implicitly, and I don't do any reporting, it's just that was the final straw. Middleton was I'm not playing for this dude. I'll sit in the, I'll be injured. With my hand injury, something like that. So
it's pretty wild.
And so, but I'd also people pushing back on me. Oh, it's not true. How do you know this? This longtime NBA insider, Peter, Peter Vexy? Yeah, who was New York, he's 80, he's an old man now, but he was one of the original basketball insiders, had his own newsletter way back in the day. It was you don't know that. And I'm I do, but also who cares? Was the thing. And And then Ayton was an interesting kind of one where, if you watch Ayton play, my man Kenny on Twitter loves rebounding and stuff like that. It's like DeAndre Ayton just looks like a guy who should work. And to date, he just doesn't matter. And it's so he's just so talented and yet can't put it all together for a full game. Like, when was the last dominant Ayton game you had? But that's the sort of distressed asset hunting that a team has to do.
Yeah.
I actually really like Middleton, but he's an older player at this point and very injury prone. So my foibles aside, I don't think that would be a dangerous signing in a vacuum, just because he's missed a lot of time. Like, you go look at his record.
He's the perfect player to put next to Luka. Honestly, he can defend on the perimeter. He can hit threes. He can create his own shot. And
big ball handler. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a very workman. I don't know how to explain that really, but he can just get open and get a shot off when he needs to. And that's something you need next to him. But yeah, it's the age and the health concerns are pretty bad there. Cause I love Middleton, honestly, but just to take that risk. I mean, we kind of keep saying this, if you do this, that's kind of your last shot with Luka, on the squad. If you do this,
I also think they would have to move, they would. It's not. I think they would have to move Kyrie. That was the unsaid portion of this. They don't have, at least for the 8-1, you would assume some kind of sign and trade,
right?
Which would at least be interesting. But I just thought those were some interesting tidbits. I mean, free agency is my own personal hell. I posted a poll on Mavs Moneyball today, which you guys should go vote in, about what you prefer, the draft or free agency, which, if you're a Mavericks fan outside of the 2018 draft, the draft is also your personal hell. It's team building for the Mavericks sucks is kind of what we're getting at. Let's see here. Before we move on to the last piece of news, do me a favor, everybody, and go the stream. That sort of thing will promote and get more. It helps pop in algorithms, because you never know what people are searching for. Obviously, it's the Mavericks off season, so we're going to continue to get these hilariously low live viewer numbers, which is fine. Anybody that's willing to hang out with us, I'm really grateful. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and do that. We're inching closer to 1,000. If we get to 1,000, that opens up some more possibilities. Just it helps our show grow. So if you could go do that, I would be really grateful. Now, the last piece of news today is not Mavericks related, but I've never, ever seen anything like this in my, 20 plus years of NBA fandom. And I don't know what to do. Where is the Shams quote? I have to find this to read it, because it's just insane. So Memphis is apparently very willing to part ways with Dillon Brooks. And from Shams, just reading his tweet word for word, the Memphis Grizzlies have informed pending free agent Dillon Brooks that he will not be brought back under any circumstances, league sources say. Now, I've done some asking around today from the various national reporters that are out there, and that means that this is not it is apparently not coming from the Grizzlies. This is a roundabout way of saying that how it got to this point, other teams have heard that is kind of what I've been led to believe. It's not necessarily coming from the Grizzlies. But then a little later in the day, the Memphis newspaper reported that he wanted and had kind of been demanding a bigger role in their offense, which, what does that mean? The man shoots a lot. He shot under 40% from the floor this season.
Yeah, 32% from three.
Woo! On volume. We're not talking low volume.
Yeah.
And then the icing on the cake, and I'm wondering, so my man Josh McSwain is in there. He's my buddy. We go to Orange Theory together. He and I saw him tweeting earlier. It's Mavericks we can't turn down talent. He's a talented player, potential all NBA or all defensive player, which is true. He apparently also asked, Ramona Shelburne reported around 5:30 tonight that he wanted $25 million a year. What?
You gotta get a little bit more. I just can't even I think you in American dollars. Come on.
Mara in the chat says, "You mean 2.5 million?"
Well, I mean, that's where I'm at, because especially you can't be asking for something like that after the performance you just saw. Where number one, you can't honestly. if your life depended on Dillon Brooks hitting a 3-pointer, you're feeling terrible about your chances. And I'm okay. LeBron James is still LeBron James, but Dillon Brooks made this whole show of like, hey, LeBron's lost a step. He's old.
I mean,
it's time.
The series turned when he started talking shit.
Yeah, and LeBron, I mean, like to win the game, the game 6, I mean, scored on. I think he scored on Dillon Brooks. I watched LeBron James like drive on Dillon Brooks a lot. He's 38 years old. LeBron, I'm the same age as LeBron James, and Dillon Brooks he said he wants to be, he walked it back saying he didn't want to be this villain that was put on him, but he very much like months prior wanted to be the villain, and he wanted to be, this defensive. I'm LeBron stopper. We've said that a bunch over the last 20 years. So, I mean, he wanted this, and then he completely failed on a guy that he said had lost a step. So that makes, I don't know, maybe Dillon Brooks has lost a step too, because I just don't see it. I think the defense there is a little bit overrated. He's one of those guys that just, he mucks things up.
Right.
It makes it look like it's good, and sometimes that is good defense. But really, I honestly I think the defense is a little. He's got good size, but sometimes the defense is a little overrated.
And that's where like the price point until the 25 million. That's why it was a really fun discussion and a fun argument, because it starts to sort of show what you as a fantasy GM in your brain values. Where Josh, again in the chat, Josh McSwain said, he's like, we can't be like kicking talent aside. We don't have any talent. Like, that's a incredibly valid point. But then if you're thinking about it, like in the Dorian Finney-Smith, like 12 to $18 million range. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
25 million is that's what Jalen Brunson gets paid.
Yeah, like no, I need a guy who can like reliably 18 to 20 points a game for that much.
And he scores 14. He gives you 14, 3 and 3, but on like truly abhorrent percentages.
Yeah.
So
it's always seems to be at the worst time too. His good games seem to come in like late February, something like that. I honestly, I mean, we've kind of whatever you want to. You've known Dillon Brooks for 5 or 6 years now. I have no like big Dillon Brooks playoff memories in my mind. So.
I mean, unfortunately, all of them are implosions now, which that's what makes you feel bad. And it's like, I went from being like very much disliking him to now feeling bad for him. Like his cycle has turned so quickly, and it's either way. The Mavericks, the bottom line for us is that the Mavericks don't have the money to pay him, so it's really a kind of a non-starter at this point. Though Josh Bowe and I cannot help it. It's like, oh no, he's gonna be a Maverick. Like I just can't shake the feeling.
Yeah, lately there's this like feeling of dudes that it's like, oh no, like this guy's heading to Dallas. Like you just get the feeling of like the worst possible guy. Like it's literally there's like 20 dudes in the league that I'm like, I really don't like that guy, and somehow like they just keep ending up on the Mavericks. It's frustrating.
So all right, so we're about 15-18 minutes into this. I'm going to take just for the edification of podcast listeners, I'm going to insert an ad after this. Like Josh and I have been saying, listening to ads helps us. We get paid by ad impression. So if you're fast forwarding through it, and it's okay, I understand if you do, but that's how we end up making the hilarious amount of money that we don't make from doing all this. But one day we will, I don't know. I just like talking about basketball, and the fact that we make a little bit of beer money is fun for it. Then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about 4 more player reviews just for the season, and then we'll close up shop.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
All right. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here and for listening to the ads. If you are watching on the video stream and you know anybody that wants to sponsor our video stream, we are available to be bought. I promise. I have no shame. I swear. Anyway. So it was a good, this was like a good year for this is like a good group of players that we're going to talk about tonight. Because the first one, when we start doing these player reviews, is always a little rough because you end up getting, the way I schedule these, it's a mix of important and less important players. But tonight with you, we have 3 very important players and 1 fun player from this Mavericks roster. So the guy that I want to start with first is our man, Jaden Hardy, who was a 2nd-round pick acquired with the Mavericks went in and basically purchased the 37th, wasn't it 37? Is that right?
37, I think, yeah.
37th pick from the Sacramento Kings, and the Mavericks later said that they would have drafted Hardy had they kept their pick, which they traded for Christian Wood. They would have used it on Hardy. And Hardy was sort of, for anyone that doesn't remember, at one point in time, Hardy was considered the top 3, one of the best high school players in the country. Went and played in the G League, struggled mightily, largely just because of, frankly, body maturity issues and the fact that he didn't have a super tight handle. He had a hard time getting to the rim, and he really looked like he might not have a place in the NBA. Mavericks drafted him. His first summer league game, which I was at, was outstanding. And then he sort of struggled to play the point guard role the rest of the way, which is fine because summer league is not really, you look for like tendencies and things that can carry over. And Hardy's willingness to shoot the basketball and paired with like a really pretty form resulted in him getting a lot of early burn with the G League. And you might have covered some of those games early on here.
I went to a couple at Frisco, and the shot looked nice. In person, there's not a lot of concerns about him. He's not like a project really or anything like that. But he's, of everything, his shot is real. I mean, It looks smooth going up. It looks good. I love it. And like you said, the willingness to shoot, that's huge. Mm-hmm. People get lost on that.
Well, and what happened was, and you see this from the fan base, is very early frustrations with why wasn't this guy playing? And I have many lengthy criticisms of Jason Kidd. I thought the plan and the execution with Jaden Hardy was really quite excellent.
Yeah, that's how you handle a young player. That's especially on a contending team. That's exactly how you bring him along.
And I bet if you were to divide, like if you were to go look at the NBA season and then Hardy's kind of G League season into quarters, every quarter we saw a little more. Now, we didn't see much in the first quarter because he's in the first 20 games. Second quarter, little. Third quarter is when we really, so the last 40 games when we really started to see more from Hardy. In the last 20 games when we saw a great deal. And I thought that, Kidd talked about this in a couple of post-game pressers where he's like, he's only going to get to play if we can put him in situations where he's going to succeed. Yeah. And that was extremely important because and again, the Mavericks didn't make the playoffs. So it kind of like proved my point in the sense of if you needed Jaden Hardy, the team was a lot shittier than we realized. Yeah. And the Mavericks did need Jaden Hardy. And the Mavericks were a lot shittier than we were realizing, at the beginning of the year. It's just kind of the nature of it. But he ended up being kind of a lone bright spot in the last 20 games. He's everybody says he's 6'4" and 200. I don't height stuff I'm not 6'4". I stood near the guy. But what he does have is long arms. Yeah. And he's got a great frame. And I think he's going to be, Dennis Smith, like seeing him this year where he kind of looked like the muscle hamster, like it makes you wonder how much muscle some of these guys can put on without losing any of their athleticism. And Hardy is he's not a superb athlete, but he's definitely an athlete. And I just liked the way he played. He finished a lot better at the NBA level than I would have thought. And he defended okay. He's not really much of a passer. That's okay. It's okay. Yeah. If you're playing with Luka Doncic, how much are you handling the ball? Can you catch? Can you execute? Can you make the simple read? And to date, I want to say the answer was yes.
Yeah, the thing I go back to is his game is smooth. Like that's what it feels like when he's out there. He's taking the shots that he should be taking. That was one thing that kind of stood out to me. I don't remember him taking a lot of shots where I'm like, what's he doing there? Taking a contested 3-pointer with 5 seconds into the shot clock or something like that. So just a nice, knowing his role on the team, knowing what he's good at. I just liked what I saw. It's like you said, he probably needs to put on another 10 pounds at least of muscle. I worry about his separation a little bit, like one-on-one. I'm not sure if he can get good enough separation at this point. But he, like you said, he doesn't need to. He's and a lot of people have brought it up. I've seen that it's possible if you could somehow the Mavericks could swing a trade, send out Tim Hardaway for someone like a rim protector or maybe another like a bigger wing, then Jaden Hardy can step into that Tim Hardaway role. Maybe January, February, I would have thought that was crazy. Now I think that's a risk, but I think it's a risk that I'm okay with them taking.
Yeah, I don't really have a good upside for him. Like one of the things I said out loud, and this will probably make the chat mad, is like, okay, Luke Burns says this in the chat. He said, the Mavericks version of Jordan Poole or Jordan Clarkson off the bench. That's a great player to get for pick 37. Not every player that you draft is going to be a starter, but if you can draft earnest to God, rotation guys, then that is really, really something. Yeah. The one, and I noted this in the last podcast, then we can kind of transition to the next guy. I do think if you consider the Mavericks 4 best players, you got 4 best players at the moment: Kyrie, Luka, Josh Green, and Jaden Hardy. 4 best assets, not players. All 4 of those guys are guards. So as married as I am and enjoy watching, it wouldn't shock me if one of Green or Hardy is gone.
Yeah.
Just because you gotta give to get. And anybody if you want to consider Green a wing, sure, but he's small. He's just not you watch him. Granted, it's not fair being next to Kevin Durant, but like all the prime small forwards in the league are big. That's what made Dorian was big. So
yeah.
John Thornton says, aren't those the 4 best players? Well, maybe, you never really know. So, all right. So the next guy I wanted to pivot to, who did I have here? You would think I would remember my own notes. Okay. Probably the most divisive player on the roster was Christian Wood. I don't even know how to talk about Christian Wood's season. Do you want to give it a whirl?
Weird. It's one of the weirder, signings, or it wasn't a signing, it was a trade, but just acquisitions that there seemed to be, and Cato's article kind of touched on it. Like I said, it was just a paragraph, but there seemed to be a weird disconnect of that Jason Kidd and the coaching staff were not interested in Christian Wood. Mm-hmm. They had in their mind a certain type of team, a defensive oriented team, mm-hmm. and Christian Wood did not fit into that, despite the fact that he could score buckets like crazy. And early on in the season, I was like, this is crazy. This guy can score. Put him in there. There are defensive limitations. Like you can see watching, he's late on rotations. Everyone gets caught up with the blocks and everything, but you better than a block is getting into a position where a guy doesn't even drive in there and preventing, any kind of rim attack at all. So I can see where they were a little hesitant at first there, but in my mind, there just wasn't enough offensive firepower on the Mavericks to get caught up in that. So, and then later on, you even had kids saying, I can't remember exactly what month, when he finally just capitulated and was like, look, we're just going to have to try and outscore everybody. We can't play defense at the level. And so, but then he still did not play Christian Wood a lot. So that's really confusing. And that's one of the things where, when people are like, well, what do you have against Kidd? You can point to stuff like that where there's really inconsistent messaging, and who knows, it's inconsistent when it's to the media and the fans. Maybe it's more consistent to the actual players and the coaching staff. Who knows? But I don't understand how well, I do understand because I'm a Mavericks fan, but it's a really weird that the front office is so disconnected from the coaching staff there that Nico Harrison or Mark Cuban or Michael Finley, somebody
did something.
Right. Somebody put their foot down or pounded the table and was like, no, I want Christian Wood. I don't care what you think, Jason Kidd.
So if you look
that's
at
weird.
So just talking about the transaction alone, they got rid of 4 not good contracts.
Yeah.
Which goes to show just we sort of under talk about how bad the Mavericks books were before Kidd and Nico Harrison even got here. Like the signings that Mark Cuban and Donnie Nelson had made were often just fucking awful. I don't, there's no other way to say it. When this in referencing Cato's article, it's like the only positive it's like they've had Luka for 5 years and they only have 3 positive assets, and one of them is Tim Hardaway Jr. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a different part with Wood. So you got kind of the feeling that there was something where not everybody was in agreement, and maybe whether it was a freelance decision by Cuban or whether it was a decision by Nico to kind of make Nico and Finley to sort of make the books get out from under just some frustrating contracts and figure out what to do with it. The messaging was all wrong from the get-go. The expectations were off center. It really makes the Mavericks look bad. There were instances of NBA players during the year. Who was it? Grant Williams, I think, was one of the guys. Like, felt like the Mavericks were messing with Christian Wood's money. Yeah. And it's not our money, but I will tell you guys, players don't like that.
Yeah.
Players and agents and stuff remember that. So like that on its face was very disappointing because it felt like a catch, kind of a chicken or the egg thing. What came first?
Right.
Christian Wood's crappy defense or the Mavericks' unwillingness to give him burn. And I really felt like the two things just kept butting heads and he never really got a chance to take off. Now, when I remove my frustration with kind of like the way his agent talked to everybody and like kind of the fact it's like, oh, look how great he is against like really bad teams. Like he still was the better option. I just, maybe he would have gotten better on defense if they would have let him stick with it. But his minutes were jerked around all year.
Yeah. I don't understand. Even if you don't like him, you get into training camp a month into the season, and you're like, look, this guy's not a great fit. Then play him. Like I said, you're not some great defensive team anyway. Play him, run up his minutes, make him a 6-man or something where he's just scoring buckets off the bench, especially like in games where you're getting blown out or you're blowing the other team out or something. Let him run up that scoring average and then trade him at the deadline. At least do something positive with that. And it's like they just didn't do that. And you talk about players saying that they're messing with his money, even if that's not they weren't doing that intentionally. The perception's there, and that's bad enough.
Yep. It's a shame because he is just so freaking talented. He was undrafted going way back, and I hold this very firm opinion that I think the greatest leaps in your basketball sort of abilities and wherewithal come between the ages of 16 and 22. Where your body's changing a lot and you're playing against top level and competition and you're learning what you can and cannot do physically. And if you have the right coaching and things like that, along with the right development at the right time, I think that's where things start to come together. I think that's where Dennis Smith missed out, for example, because he was injured his senior year and went to a crappy college and just missed out on 2 years of development. And I just wonder what would have happened if Wood had gotten in a better situation and approached things with a better attitude. It's tough because I love his game from a visual aesthetic point of view. Like when he's working on offense, he can really pass. He can shoot. He can drive. He a little weak on contact, but what are you going to do? Great handles. Like he just seemed to match with Luka in a lot of ways on offense, but the Mavericks just didn't want to give it enough burn. And then he sort of shot himself in the foot on occasion. Like he was low key. One of the things that got lost in a lot of the shuffle was he was like Luka Jr. in terms of his emotions. Like he would let things get the best of him and they'd do the same. It's like, you're not good enough to do this shit, man.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Well, celebrations, I mean, like they'd be down 15 or something. And he hit a shot and act like, he had just like hit a clinching game 6 like dagger or something like that. And you're just like, calm down. Or same thing, if he missed a shot, he'd lose his mind and acting like he got fouled. And it's like, dude, you're 1 of 9. Know, we'll move on. So it's one of those things where it's there's a lot of talk, we're complaining about how the Mavericks handled it, but I did not like the player at all. So, I wonder if they had done this trade, exactly everything's the same, and they just played him and it just didn't work out. I think we would feel less annoyed about it, because sometimes first round picks just don't work out. So if you just treat him like he's a first round pick, I mean, like I've seen, Mo Ager, so just a lot of late first round picks from the Mavericks just not work out. And sometimes that's just how it is. Yep. So if they had truly played this guy like, you think they would, and it just didn't work out, I think we'd all be a little less frustrated.
And speaking of frustrated, it's time to pivot to the third guy on our list. Everybody's favorite Dallas Maverick, Dwight Powell.
Maverick for life.
Well, Dwight Powell. He is, and I didn't know this, I just looked at this seconds ago. Dwight Powell is tied for number 9 all time in terms of games played as a Dallas Maverick. He's tied with Sean Bradley with 582 career games played as a Dallas Maverick. And that is fucking remarkable.
That's with missing a big chunk with an Achilles injury, too.
He was a throw-in for the Rajon Rondo trade in 2015. He has been with the Mavericks for such a long time, and there's simply no way to discuss Dwight Powell rationally, because he's the only guy on the team besides Maxey that can set a screen, but he can't rebound. He can't defend. He can kind of pass, can't really score, only unless you serve it above the rim to him. If he gets so much grief and then so much praise, and there's just no reasonable way to talk about Dwight Powell.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Like I said, I don't know about your high school basketball career, but I think me and you were kind of similar, of that lacking in skill and athleticism, but really coachable and in the right, like, where you're supposed to be on the court, right. You know what you're supposed to do. You just don't have like the talent to reach like even a C level player at whatever level, B level, whatever. And that's Dwight Powell. Like, they're constantly trying to replace him. They really, honestly, they know, the Mavericks know. They brought in JaVale McGee to play 15 minutes so that Dwight Powell wouldn't have to. I think they would have loved, JaVale McGee for like 20, 25 minutes, Dwight Powell for 10 minutes, and Christian Wood kind of.
He played in the first 4 games of the season. He had 3 DMPs.
Yeah. They don't want to play him. He is Udonis Haslem. But when you're just a coach and the other guys are just messing up, constantly, it's like a safety valve. It's like, hey, put Dwight Powell in. At least Luka's going to know where he's going to be. Like, he's going to be in the right places on offense. He's going to set good screens. He's going to try to rebound. He's going to be in position on defense. And so as a coach, you're like, I just got to put him in there. I've tried these other 2 guys and they're just not working out. And I just need someone to be safe. I just need like someone, a C+, B- out there to hold up one position on the court, and I can figure out the rest of the 4. So very much like I completely I think he's going to be back on the roster next year with somebody else ahead of him that they're going to try and bury him on the roster, and somehow like a zombie he'll come back and play.
And that's Josh Bowe's contention, is that they have to part ways with him just so they cannot keep going to him like a crutch.
Yeah.
And it's truly amazing. He just keeps he's like a zombie. He just keeps coming. And the rebounding, he doesn't have someone in the chat says he has the most useless muscle body ever. Like, he's so, like, he looks strong but can't do anything with it. Like, it's just I don't know. I feel like he gets a lot more grief because of what the Mavericks have asked of him, as opposed to what his limitations are obvious. Yeah. And the Mavericks just keep tossing him out there. So it's, I'll be interested to see if he comes back. I I wouldn't hate it, but I do understand Josh's point of view about, hey, we just maybe need to move on from him entirely.
Yeah, if he's like your third big man, maybe fourth, you can definitely live with fourth. If he's your third big man or something like that, that's fine. But you have to have two solid guys ahead of him. Because you would love, like I said, Dwight Powell, his whole energy and everything, you'd love to have that on the bench. He's one of those guys, I kind of complain that the Mavericks haven't had anybody with really good playoff experience or like just an experienced veteran leader. He's kind of getting to that point. He hasn't been in any big games, I guess, outside of, the playoff run last year. But, you can't complain about having a guy like that on the bench. It's when he's just getting overpowered. But, he just has no chance against some of the superstars of the league. So
I think that's right. Okay, the last guy we'll talk about, and then we'll close out, is Davis Bertans, who somehow, he played a career low in games this year. He dealt with injuries, and it was a hamstring injury, which was interesting. His knees had been a problem coming into this year, but hamstring was something that just wouldn't heal. He didn't really get a lot of burn. Shot the 3-ball right at his career average. I would like to see the Mavericks. He's going to be back with the team because he has probably the worst contract relative to value in basketball right now. If you don't think it's the worst, it's top 10. He makes, next season he makes 17 million, and the year after that he makes 16. And it does have it's a player option though, so he's gonna take it. Like, why? He's never gonna. This is life-changing money. I would like to see the Mavericks, if they run him out, he needs to get like a 2-shot minimum. Where if Davis Bertans goes in the game and he misses his first 2 shots, pull him out.
Yeah.
But if he's on fire, keep him in, because he really is. He's just he just swings games with his shooting. It feels unstoppable because he plays so hard.
Yeah,
but he's not good.
He's got such a pretty stroke too. Like when he's shooting it, it's like I've never seen a shot of his that goes in that like it seems like it doesn't hit the rim at all. It's just like whoosh, just nice, barely moves the net. It's so pretty. But yeah, he can't do anything on defense. He's got the body of a center, like a really thin center, so he can't guard like actual big guys, but he's so big that he can't guard on the perimeter either.
That's
so
right.
He's a contract that
they can't.
Yeah.
Somebody asked if they could what's it called? Stretch his contract. And that would be dead money on the cap for like 5 more years. And at a certain point, you just got to eat. You just got to eat it and clear it off. It's brutal.
Honestly, in the last year, he's probably just you can use his contract to facilitate another trade or something like that.
Maybe. He's just
expiring contracts aren't what they used to be, but I mean, like I said, if you're like 17 million short and some team's like, yeah, whatever, we're just not going to re-sign him next year, then that's basically his trade value.
This is Josh Mazer. What's Josh? Your site name is slipping my mind. 214 something. I was reading an article on it yesterday. I couldn't losing my mind, but that's a great comment. Slimmest shoulders I've ever seen. And Josh goes to games and takes a lot of photographs of these guys. And one of the things that doesn't come across on TV, if you haven't been to a game recently, guys, is just how skinny these dudes are, period. Like, they look bigger on TV than you see them in person. 214 The Win. That's the name of Josh's site. Go check it out. It's a good site. I've enjoyed reading things over there. But these guys are like, Tyson Chandler is one of the skinniest people I've ever seen. I just didn't understand how it worked. Like, Dirk Nowitzki just looks like a piece of beef, like 7-foot tall beef jerky. But, so to say that Davis Bertans is the skinniest shoulders, like, that's really saying something. Like, he's got a look. He's Charlie Villanueva with bright red hair. God, Charlie V, there's a name. I don't really have anything else to say. No real insightful analysis on this guy. I'm just kind of like, we're just hearing the point. We're I don't want to say we're killing time, but like, I'm avoiding like losing my mind on certain elements of things. One thing I did want to point out, and I should have done this a while ago before we head out, is that if you have a question you want to talk to me about, send us an email at our email address, which is podmaverickpodcast@gmail.com. When I do a live show, I'm either going to do it Thursday night or Friday during the workday again, because I've enjoyed getting some of our overseas listeners. to hop on and talk basketball. If you have any questions, maybe I'll start the show that way, because these live shows, they tend to pick up whenever people, if you subscribe to the show, you kind of got to go through a lot of actions to get notified when things are going live. And if you haven't joined the live shows, I like bringing people up and talking hoop with, just about everyone. That's the whole point of this endeavor. That email again for those listening on the podcast is podmaverickpodcast@gmail.com. I will also drop it into the show notes. Ben, do you have anything before we get out of Dodge?
No, just enjoying these last playoff games before things get really sparse. So
no, man, the one game a night shit, I love it. You are a sicko. I can't. These 3-game night stuff, it still hurts me.
Well, it's settled down now. Yeah, like I said, I think I said it when I hopped on a live show with you. It starts off like Thanksgiving dinner, where you're all like, oh, look at all this food we got. And then within a week, I'm like, I'm kind of tired of all this basketball. This is overwhelming. Now I've had like a couple of days to recharge. I'm back to, we got two games a night now. I think this is going to be the worst. I don't know what's up with the Phoenix and Denver series, where game 2 is on Monday and game 3 is on Friday. That's kind of crazy.
I mean, they treat it like an NBA TV series. It's pissing me off. Like it's just, it sometimes feels like the NBA telegraphs such stuff. But
yeah,
okay. But before, one of the things I started doing and then kind of got away from it, I don't know why. Mainly, I just must be a moron. We're doing a tankathon. And I want to do a tankathon run before we get out of here.
Oh,
so for those of you who are listening, you can probably see this on the live stream. For those who are listening, obviously it's tankathon.com. I just go in and we're gonna sim the lottery. Okay, the Mavericks are locked into 10. We have a 3% chance to jump to number 1 overall.
Okay, I'm going to predict.
Go ahead.
They're going to land at 3 when you simulate.
When I simulate, 14%, 13.9% chance of the top 4. It's pretty good. Pretty good. All right, let's click the button here. The Dallas Mavericks stay locked at 10. The Washington Wizards jump from 7 to 1. And, and so Indiana goes up to 4. Portland goes up to 1. I mean, the flattening of the odds, I love.
Yeah,
love the the odds.
You just doing that got me kind of excited for the draft lottery now. So,
I mean, I'm probably going to do a live show so you could see Josh and I dying in real time when the Mavericks thing comes up at number 11 or something like that. It's going to be.
That might be one of those. I don't know if you have the ability to do it, but like have a bunch of us from Mavs Moneyball like hop in or something like that. I don't know. That would
I mean, like there's nothing like. I honestly considered going to a sports bar, but I kind of want to. I don't know what I want to do. We still got time to figure that whole deal out. So, well, guys, again, I've left the email up there. If you got a question or something you want to talk about, podmaverickpodcast@gmail.com. This has been Kirk Henderson and Ben Zadell. Head over to mavsmoneyball.com and read whatever stuff we have coming up. I know we got a couple of Wings posts coming up the next several days from a new contributor who wanted to write about the Wings, and I am happy to post basketball content. This has been great fun. Thanks so much for hanging out. Please subscribe to the show, both in YouTube form and in podcast form, and leave us a review and leave comments, all that stuff. We really appreciate your time and support. Go Mavs.